friends. It's been many months since I've been on here to make any content for you. Please forgive me, and please know I've thought of you literally daily. You can ask my friends and family that I lament to. It would be a meme at this point. Be like, oh, when I get back to my videos. Today I'm here to talk about, this is pretty impromptu. I threw on a bra for y'all. I was out here in my garden, and I just really got fired up to make this video that I've been asked about before, and that is on the topic of plantar fasciitis. There are, countless videos for plantar fasciitis on YouTube. And so for a while there, I was just like, I'm not really sure what my angle is going to be to contribute something to this conversation. And then I began watching more of the videos because thankfully, I don't actively suffer from plantar fasciitis. And it occurred to me I should just really know what's being put out there. What are the physical therapists and podiatrists, what are they suggesting? And just now, I was in my garden doing garden stuff, and I was feeling some organic plantar fascial stretch on my feet because I was in these positions of where that fascia is being stretched. And these are actually positions that you'll recognize if you've watched some of those videos where people will be telling you to stretch that plantar fascia in this dorsiflexion, and then they'll even have you bring your toes up to get added stretch to the plantar fascia. I will link videos below that detail just that. And that's what made me think to share this video today. As I've assessed, there's kind of two camps of plantar fasciitis therapy that come down in YouTube land. There's the stretch camp and there's the strengthen camp. Okay? Both have things to offer the conversation. Both are promising, and depending on the nature and the cause, the underlying cause of why you have plantar fascial pain, you might get more or less benefit from either of those camps, and very possibly a combination of the two. So I would explore and I would try and I would listen to your own body. Before I go further, I want to say I'm not a physical therapist. I think of myself as an interpreter of physical therapy because I'm so interested in my own body. I indulge on a lot of PT videos, among other things, right? Videos for medical students, just straight up anatomy videos, all of the above, for just more education about how my body works. I've invested thousands of dollars in it because I'm so interested, and I use the information within the capacity that's legally permissible for me in the classes and the movement coaching courses that I do with people. Okay, that is to say, here, I'm really just going to try to filter and organize some of the material that I've collected for you, take it and explore it, and I'm just giving it to you for you to critically think about and then apply for your own body, okay? So just to be clear. I would also be sure to start with one of Dr. Emily Splickle's podiatrist, movement specialist, Dr. Emily Splickle's recent videos where she describes the difference between plantar fasciitis and fasciosis, right? I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I'm getting the jargon correctly, but essentially the level of chronicity in this foot injury that you have, right, in your plantar fascial injury. Is this something that you've had for a couple weeks, for a couple months, or is this something that you've had for years, either constantly or that just keeps cycling back? Because that's going to tell you something about the underlying health of the tissue in question that we're going to talk about in a minute. But it's going to have a big indicator in terms of, it's like a fork in the road as to how the expectations you can have of your body and the game plan that you should strategize to get yourself out of pain. Like if it's been ongoing, out of pain once and for all, or out of pain nice, quick, and easy, quote unquote, if this is a more recent acute burst of inflammation and plantar fasciitis. So there's where we start. Plantar fasciitis is a form of inflammation of your plantar fascia. There are videos with better ways to show you your plantar fascia, but I might as well just show you on my foot because I think you can see, notwithstanding the dirt, the lines of tension that you're seeing as I stretch the surface of my foot, the plantar surface of my foot. We have fascia all over our body. We have that same, you have some sort of comparable fascia in your hand if you feel that tightness on your hand, right? We have fascial interaction throughout our body, and it converges in places like our hand and feet, and very especially our feet, for multiple reasons. One, it has a lot of nerves in it. It helps our body find our feet to navigate the world since they're what we walk on. And it has structural support capacity, right? Different types of fascia, and in particular this leathery, thick, binding, aponeurosis, it's often called your plantar aponeurosis, not just fascia, has a tensile strength, a very strong tensile strength. And you want to think of it as one of the connective tissue pieces of infrastructure to maintain stability in this part of your body, the foot. Now, one thing that got me super exercised, though I'm all huffy about this just now, is I was watching one of the videos that popped up in my feed. This one had tens of thousands of likes and millions of views. And it's like a 15-minute long video. I was like, let me see what this guy has to say. And I'm going to link it below, and I have full respect for the guy, and I'm really happy for everyone that's benefited from his video. Anyway, at the beginning of his video, he does a really nice job showing you, right, this sort of truss system of how the plantar fascia, right, helps connect and sustain this is one of the arches of the foot. This is the medial side, medial longitudinal arch of the foot. We also have a lateral longitudinal arch and a transverse arch of the foot. Table that for another video, but it's relevant here. It's relevant. It'll have a relevance here in a minute. But usually when we're talking about the arch of the foot, we're talking about the medial longitudinal arch, and sure enough, the various strands of aponeurotic fascia under the foot converge at the base of the heel, right? Which is where people have a lot of pain sometimes because that attachment point is sensitive, right? The fascia itself is stronger than its ability to adhere to bone. And so we often will get the irritation can be at that insertion. The fascia also originates and sort of is in deep, intimate conversation with your Achilles tendon and the tendon that wraps down, particularly from your gastroc and soleus muscle in the back of your calf, under here to the heel, and then it picks up again, right? There's like a junction, and then it picks up again, all right? So this podiatrist, or PT, I'm not sure what he was, described that action of the plantar fascia as helping support, or he actually called it the thing that supports this arch. And that is where I'm going to challenge people. That is where I'm going to challenge to say it's not supposed to be what we're relying on to maintain the arch. It is the backstop of this fortification of this arch, and it is the lever against which all the muscles in the foot and that come down into the foot from the calf, so gastroc and soleus, but also the deeper muscles behind here in this nice, amazingly compacted cylinder of multiple muscles, most of which wrap under the foot this way to pull down into the foot, a few of which, critically, and not to diminish their importance, but you can see the body allocated more importance to back here than the shin, right? A lot more compartment muscles here than in the front. Some of them will lift the foot, awesome. That's very important. But a lot of them do this action of plantar flexing the foot towards the plantar surface that we just described, the anatomical description of the bottom of your foot. There's also dozens, we'll just leave it at that, dozens of muscles in the foot itself, most of which, like if you feel there's not a lot of muscle on the top of your foot, there's a couple in between these bones here that help support lifting the foot, but the vast majority of the muscles in your foot, you might not even realize you have muscles in your feet, because if you're like me, my foot used to be so weak and atrophied, it just looked like bone. It looked like a little bony skeleton structure with skin wrapped around it, and I didn't expect it to have much muscular activation because I wasn't using those muscles. That's very different now. I've built up probably almost 2 centimeters of muscle between the arch of my foot and what is now the surface of my foot, because I've grown the muscles in my feet, right? Anyway, so you got a lot of muscles in your feet, and those muscles, most of which are on the bottom surface, are actually what your body expects you to be using to help you squeeze and maintain the stability, which is the integrity of that arch so it doesn't collapse. Okay? So those muscles, all of them have a relationship with the fascia in your feet to an extent. And they also have a relationship to each other. And it's this like amazing tug of war pulley system from the tips of the toes. Some of these muscles in your calf attach to the very tip, the first digit, so like the first knuckle, the equivalent of the very first knuckle of your toe. They attach way down to the tip to help pull down from here, down into those toes to help you muscularly lift that arch. And from those longest most muscles, there's muscles in the foot that grab onto this heave-ho tug-of-war rope to add leverage and strength up around this brilliant pulley system. Here's our medial malleolus of the ankle. This is where your tibia and fibula on the outside meet the talus, the first bone in the actual foot, to make what is your ankle joint. These muscles wrap around to pull down. You can imagine they're wrapping under the foot, they're pulling down. Yes, I'm oversimplifying the anatomy, but just for the big picture, right? They're pulling down to lift. They're pulling down to lift that arch. We have some on the outside too to support this lateral arch we talked about. And now, let me just break to say, I think you get the point. We got a lot of muscles that we're not using, hence we have an arch that's collapsing. Okay? As that arch collapses, as you've seen in other videos, the fascia is being problematically stretched. Now that fascia is strong as F, as we talked about, because it's meant to stretch. It is meant to take the, use, not abuse, but the very intense use of your foot to carry you around all day, ideally without orthotics and without support shoes and without, inches of cushion. That's how our foot was designed. It's designed to be able to take some serious, rigorous stress, ground force stress, multiples of your body weight of stress. Each time you walk, it's like 1 to 4 times your body weight. A running step can be like, 4, 7, as much as like 10 times your body weight, leaping, jumping. It's meant to be able to take that stress, all right? And you need your foot to stretch. You don't want your foot to just maintain the rigidity of this arch. Those muscles aren't there to have a hard break. They're there to provide a thick, dense spring coil using the strength of the plantar fascia. You can almost imagine, and again, this is imaginative creative anatomy here, but you can imagine the fascia and all of those long tendons from these muscles up in the calf. You can imagine them as sort of contributing to the tug-of-war rope. And with no rope, there's nothing for anyone to pull on. They're pulling on it, and that's giving them leverage to hold your muscle or your arch up. But without the muscle power, the rope itself is just going to lie on the floor and get stretched taut, right? Or severed, which is our problem here, right? So plantar fasciitis is essentially an irritation, an inflammation of the plantar fascia that is a result of abusive collapse, repetitive abusive collapse of the arch, right? Which my foot isn't even really letting me do anymore, because first of all, I have a high arch rigid foot, but it's also kind of like, no, I don't do that collapse thing. But essentially that's what's going on. And whether you have a softer, flatter foot position or a high arched foot, you can still get the overstretch. And if you're having symptoms of plantar fasciitis, burning, heel pain at the middle arch or at the heel attachment, then you know that plantar fascia is being more stressed than it can tolerate, and it's telling you. So back to our camps of camp stretch and camp strengthen. I've seen it, like I said, I've seen a couple of videos, and I have things I could contribute to each side. Number one, so I just said, you have plantar fascia as a result of stretch, right? Excess stretch causing symptomatic burning sensation, damage to the tissue, inflammation in the tissue. So you already have tissue that's kind of long and kind of stretched. Now, you may get short, if the stretch that you're experiencing is something localized, right? If that pain you're experiencing is because your fascia just happens to be too short, independent of something else in your body, like a muscular deficiency of the way you're using your feet, calves, the way you walk, whatever it is, right? If you just have some organic level tightness or shortness in that fascia, and then you roll it on a lacrosse ball, or roll it on a frozen water bottle, or scrape it out. I've seen podiatrists and chiropractors scraping out, like putting like ice numbing gel on their hands and, rasping with a metal, like a washout tool, or however you say that. The tools I'm talking about, to like scrape the fascia, to lengthen it. Their goal is to lengthen it. You have something that's already telling you, I'm too long, I'm desperately too long. You're gonna go in there and scrape it. My assessment is that is at best going to give you limited term symptom relief, okay? Because that muscle, or the fascia, the connective tissue is telling you, I need to be longer for what you're asking of me. You're like, okay, I can make you micro longer for a short time, right? I can give you a little extra length and also just provide the nociceptive dulling, right? The sort of that massage, the ice, everything else is sort of dulling your pain and giving you a quick fix. If you get permanent relief from that, then that tells you that you really did just have a localized excessive tightness in that tissue. And I'm happy for you if that's all it was and you can go on with your life. But if you are one of, I imagine, countless other people who are not getting relief from that, because you see that advice in almost every video, there's millions of videos, and there's still an incredible demand for plantar fasciitis PT and relief, right? I'm guessing that's not helping a lot of people, right? So part of the reason is because your plantar fascia is telling you, I'm too tight because I'm collapsing. Please don't lengthen me further, or just don't only lengthen me further, while not providing some actual backup support muscularly so that I'm not repeatedly stressed. All right, so that brings us to camp strength, which is great, also great. I think, it's not either or. Do both, especially because you might actually, well, without digressing too far, there might be great reasons to massage your plantar fascia just to make it feel better. I'm not against it just feeling better in the short term while you do other things to fortify it. Okay, so this isn't an either or. But here's my beef with what I've seen from camp strength. I see a lot of the predominant exercises I see in camp strength are calf raise oriented things, and towel scrunching, right? Towel scrunching, marble collecting, and calf raises, including calf raises that are way ratcheted up in intensity. Some of which would be like, you're standing on a stair and your heel is able to hang off the edge of the stair, so you're getting a lot of range of motion, from maximal stretch of that fascia to maximum shortening of the fascia. And then people will even have you put a towel under your toes, again picturing that you're going from the maximum stretch of the fascia to the maximum contraction of the fascia with your muscular effort. All right, this is me doing a calf raise, right? Doing a calf raise. And that is to strengthen, right, my calf. the primary muscles that are involved. Here's where I'm going with this. This action, whether you have your toes up on a support of a towel or not, this action is at your ankle, right? Me raising and lowering my foot. The action is at my ankle. It's mostly gastroc and soleus doing that, right? It has assist from the deeper muscles, right? I'm not saying it's complete, but this is an ankle action. That is super important. Okay, I need a strong calf for a strong ankle mobility and action, so that I have my foot is set up for success to do foot stuff, which requires, this is plantar and this is dorsiflexion. This is a calf raise in walking gait. I plant my foot on the ground and then I move forward through space. You can imagine that's a calf raise, okay? Wrap your brain around that. That's what's going on. But that is really, number one, I have a few beefs with this. Number one, if you are in chronic or acute, if you are in acute plantar fasciitis pain, your foot is massively inflamed, you don't have a strong foot, okay? That is just objectively pretty much clear to us. You don't have a particularly strong foot. And then you ask your foot to do a very demanding exercise that is putting the fascia through a long range of motion, then my guess is that the fascia is going to be irritated with you and that you might find that exercise very aggravating for your pain. It might not be something you feel that you can do consistently, and it might just be like starting with way too much, right? Like, I want to get stronger, I need to do deadlifts and squats, I'm going to go pick up the 500-pound dumbbell. I'm going to hurt myself, okay? I start with something manageable. I start with no resistance on the bar, and just how about moving the foot through the range of motion and squeezing my own muscles without putting my full body weight on it, let alone, extra body weight, and then making it even harder by taking my toes into fuller extension. I'm rambling, but you get my picture. So that's number one. There's two issues I've said in a confusing way right there. Number one is those exercises are very limited to the ankle. They're not getting sufficient targeting at the foot muscles, the intrinsic foot muscles themselves. These are the extrinsic foot muscles that lie here. So number one, we're leaving a lot of strengthening that would directly benefit your plantar fascia kind of off the table, right? It's not the way to target those muscles, number one. So I'm all for calf raises. You can look at the rest of my channel. I love calf raises. I do a lot of calf raises. I want strong calves and feet. They have a place. Are they the first exercise I would do if I had acute plantar fasciitis? No. No, they are not. I could work towards it, and I would aspire to work towards it. So that's number one, is I don't think it's an appropriate starting exercise if your foot is in a lot of pain, and I want you to know you have options. I will follow up with this video with what I think are more measured, realistic options to help you build the exact same targeted ankle strengthening that is sought after in those videos. That's an important part of your foot mechanics, and that will hopefully lead you to long-term success in overcoming your plantar fasciitis. Number two, like I was saying, that is leaving a lot of the intrinsic foot muscles, the dozens of muscles that are in your foot, relatively, it's not that they're not doing anything, right? But they're not being targeted. And they are the closest, they are the first responders in here. These are the heavy lifters, but these are the first responders, right? In here at the foot that are gonna micro support the plantar fascia, that are gonna leverage these muscles to help when they pull on the plantar fascia, to not abuse it, but to coordinate with it. So there's no reason you can't do both, right? You can strengthen both, but definitely don't leave the intrinsic foot strengthening off the table. So what are some go-to intrinsic foot strengthening muscles that you see in various YouTube videos? Well, the first that you will normally see are the counting marbles and scrunching towels. And I'm pro this action. I'm pro this action of making this plantar flexion, right? Not just at my ankle. Now I'm not very good at just isolating that, but you can see my ankle is minimally moving. And now rather than ankle, 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 it's more midfoot, 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 right? I'm squeezing from like here. I'm simulating the counting. Okay. 100%. 100% that action, we're going to talk more. Again, go into more detail as to the direction of pushing down into the toes and pulling back on them, this clawing. This is your foot making a fist, right? This is your foot making a fist equivalent for your foot. If you have a softer, less rigid foot than me, then you might be able to squeeze it even more demonstrably than I am there, but that's me making a fist with my high arch, rigid foot type. And you can squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. I can't get it to move anymore, but I can get a lot of radiating muscular activation intensity in this fist. And that's a great way to strengthen your foot. This is what I'm going to get back to when I say I will start showing you some of the ways I've strengthened my feet and even helped myself overcome injuries that weren't plantar fasciitis, but I think have a very reasonable role to play in overcoming plantar fasciitis, because it's all the same stuff. We're just asking our feet to do the same stuff. And if I want to strengthen my feet, I have certain muscles to use to do that. So I got to learn to use them, period. But here's the problem with the crunching towels and counting marbles. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to race through this because I have a call to get on in a second. Problem is, when we think about, number one, not nearly enough resistance is built up in these muscles when you just scrunch. And because the direction when someone's like count marbles or, pick up marbles or scrunch a towel, the focus of that instruction is what the towel is doing, right? Or what the marbles are doing. And instead, I want you to focus and as a result, you kind of just air crunch the towel, right? You're just kind of doing this. You're doing this with your hands rather than this with your fists, right? This with your fists is going to strengthen your grip, right? And your forearm, right? And your forearm, and help you do more powerful things like a chin up with your hands, like, I don't know, a leap with your legs, right? Like thinking upper body, lower body. I need a strong hand to do powerful upper body stuff. I need a strong foot to even just walk, let alone higher intensity things. So, or just stand and asking the foot to bear my own weight. And we know just sedentary-ish standing, right? Stationary standing is one of the most aggravating things to your plantar fascia, in part because the muscles are checked out. The muscles are checked out, and it's very easy to have dead weight into the fascia. So it's most vulnerable to the collapse at that moment. Whereas at least when you're walking, right, even just a slow amble walk, you're getting more muscular feedback that's also supporting the fascia. Just putting that out there to say, even just standing, there's a lot of demand on that fascia, and we need the muscles to be already instinctively kicked in at a higher muscular engagement threshold for something as basic as standing, if you're not going to get plantar fasciitis symptoms in that from that activity, right? And if you do, then arch support for sure. No ego. Put an arch support. Make sure that you are protecting your fascia, right? You don't want to get down into that road of having it for years, doing damage to the tissue, right? Again, I'll send a video. There's kind of alarming research actually about the impact of having unabated plantar fasciitis for years. Okay, so let's not let that be you. So back to the towel and marbles. So instead, the same action, which is flexion of our toes and plantar flexion oriented movement, right, at the toe digits, right, so it's like the ball of the toe, this joint across the ball, at the arch, right, activation of those muscles at the arch, so the metatarsal, it's like the equivalent of this in my hand, and then this kind of action in my hand versus moving at my wrist, right? You're just noticing, if you look at the foot structure, if you look at that arch of the foot that supposedly our plantar fascia holds up, this is the apex of the arch. I have bones on this side and bones going down either side of my truss arch, right? In addition to being my ankle. I want to strengthen the muscles that push my toes down. I want to strengthen the muscles that help me hold this half of the arch by pushing it down. I want to strengthen the muscles that cross both of those sides and help squeeze like a tent, right? It's like a tent pole, right? If this is the dome of my tent, if I stick that pole in the ground, one pole on the ground on this side, it goes up and over the arc of the tent, and I stick it down into the ground on that side. There's muscles here that do the same thing to help hoist up that arch because they're so strong. So you can think about when you squeeze your foot this way, you're helping prop up, right? You're propping up the tent poles. I'm way off into la la land of this description, guys. I'm trying to just throw a ton of information at you, almost a half-hour video. It is to say more intense strengthening of the foot. Forget the towel, forget the marbles, unless it helps you. Unless you can squeeze that towel with those toes and it helps you, then let's talk about other ways to strengthen your feet. I'm not against the towel prop, okay, or anything else that helps you get good activation of your foot. But the repeated sort of like floppy finger, floppy toe, just like, what if I just do this? You might get some benefit, but no, you need to make this a resistance training exercise for your foot to help support your plantar fascia, to help meaningfully, muscularly stabilize your arch with or without assistance from orthotic props, depending on the nature of your foot and the nature of the progression of your injury, right? Protect your body. Protect your body. Do what you need to do to protect this arch, but no, you're very unlikely to stretch your way out of it long term, and that it's going to probably be a process of listening to how the sort of letting the tissue calm down so that you can begin to strengthen it in a conservative way that isn't just giving, overly frustrating, overly taxing exercises that might do more harm than good, because if the muscles aren't strong enough for that exercise, guess who's going to be stressed out? It's the same as the muscles aren't strong enough to handle walking, right? If my plantar fascia is aggravated when I walk because the muscles aren't strong enough, and I go to do a single leg calf raise, 15 reps or something, okay, obviously my muscles are not strong enough. The plantar fascia is going to be even more vulnerable. That might be my goal, to get my muscles in my foot and calf to be that strong. But if I'm not there yet, that's not where I start. That's not where I start, especially with inflammation and pain. So, big picture recommendations that I would give is, number one, start with mobilizing your foot. Do whatever movement you can in the morning to get circulation and mobility and just ease, right? Ease into this inflamed tissue. Treat it compassionately, all right? It's angry and it has a reason to be. Treat it compassionately, massage. I have a video about just like waking up my feet, doing some ankle circles. This is not the strengthening part. This is just mobilizing. And notice it has a stretching component, not because I'm scraping it abusively, right? I'm not asking for it to be more than just physiologically long, more than its appropriate length. But just get it to move. Wiggle your toes a lot, because they attach to like 19 different tendons, 18, 19 different tendons. For each one of those tendons, there's a muscle attached. Moving your toes, wiggling your toes, spreading and contracting your toes to wake up your feet. That's step one, especially before you put weight on them in the morning. I consider this just coffee for my feet. I don't ask anything of them without coffee first, right? I move them, plantar and dorsiflex, do it. I'm going to come back and I'm going to make a video talking to you about some of the exercises that I've designed for my own, well, I've just gathered, I shouldn't say I've designed them, for my feet. Most of them are drawn from things like that ballet dancers do for their feet. Because as far as I can tell, foot strength is wasted on ballet dancers who just want to ruin their feet jumping on their toes. Okay, ballet is an amazing sport, but they are the ones who are doing all this incredible foot strengthening, and then they abuse their feet. I'm like, how about I just do what they do to strengthen their feet and then walk and run and do normal human stuff? All right, so let's be back for some of that. Whether or not you have plantar fasciitis, if you don't have plantar fasciitis, you're probably not watching this, but if you are and you just want to prevent it, or you know someone who it does, right? All of us can benefit from strengthening our feet, and I'll make a dedicated video for plantar fasciitis to think about really conservative exercises that keep you out of the pain threshold, out of provoking pain, and that conservatively and really respectfully honoring your foot structure help you strengthen it to get back your pain-free foot capacity. Thank you, friends. I hope this has been useful.